What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel. On Nootropics, thanks so much for being with me. I'm going to talk about restoring dopaminergic function. I also want to discuss D2's inhibitory action or lack of inhibitory action on L-Dopa, exogenous L-Dopa administration, and some neurogenesis stuff, all tailored around restoring dopaminergic function, which is a huge topic for the PSSD folks, so it's a huge topic in my life. It's also a huge topic in Parkinson's disease and folks that have Parkinson's disease. So I'd like to talk about a little bit of the nuanced details. In the meantime, as you see on the right-hand side of the screen, that is the Cortex Stack. That's our flagship nootropic product. Listen, powerful mental energy, verbal fluency, motivation, will to work, just sort of stroking the dopamine side of things, getting you very into your work, or maybe even cleaning your house. Buy a bottle of Cortex, livecortex.com for what's being called the only premium stack that works. Listen, if you're new to nootropics, meaning like you just started and you're kind of confused and you really want to get a leg up on it, start getting results, get Nootropics Ground Zero. It's a video course that I created for people that are new. It's like Cortex Labs so far hasn't invented a lot of products that were not out there. The best products are products that you're pissed off that don't exist. I created Nootropics Ground Zero for people that are new. We'll just skip to the last thing here, which is that the 3.5-month and the 6-month intensive nootropics consulting packages, there are still slots open for each of them. If you need a discount, if you're a business person and want to work with me to optimize brain performance long-term, restore productivity, restore energy, get either one of these consults if you have the budget. 6 months is better. But if you need a discount on either one of those, please email me at ryan@livecortex.com. Those will fill fast, get on them ASAP. Okay, so I want to talk about a couple things. I'm going to bring in some screenshots, some papers that describe this, or that'll help me illustrate some of my points. The first point being, so let's just take levodopa for example, L-Dopa, okay? L-Dopa. L-Dopa, so long as you are properly expressing dopamine synthesis enzymes like tyrosine hydroxylase, and importantly from L-Dopa to dopamine dopa decarboxylase, it's a tricky compound, right? Because there are some seeming longer-term supersensitivity dopamine receptor desensitization that has been reported to happen from long-term chronic administration of L-Dopa. However, it does have the ability to restore dopaminergic function, again, assuming that you've got the enzymes in proper quantity to facilitate the conversion process. But the interesting thing about it, and where folks may need to be a little careful in dosing it, is the following. So I'm going to bring in a bunch of papers here on this. That's a levodopa-induced plasticity. So here basically marks one major point. Although this drug precursor can be metabolized into the active neurotransmitter dopamine throughout the brain, its therapeutic effect or benefit is due to restoring extracellular DA levels within the dorsal striatum, which lacks endogenous DA as a consequence of the neurodegenerative process of Parkinson's, okay? So that pretty much solidifies, at least in the striatum, restoring dopamine levels. But what folks need to understand about, let me take these screenshots out, about trying to restore dopaminergic function is what you're attempting to do is restore the function of current dopaminergic neurons and like synapses and terminals and things of this nature. But what it is not clear L-Dopa has the ability to do is actually generate new dopaminergic neurons, which is what you would want. You would want to regenerate the quantity of neurons because in Parkinson's and in a lot of other situations, and I believe in PSSD, there's a loss of dopaminergic neurons, literally loss of dopaminergic neurons, and that's measured in a couple studies on PSSD. But what is important about, okay, so we know that L-Dopa administration and co-administering something like bromantine, which will pump up the dopamine conversion enzymes, will allow you to restore extracellular levels of dopamine. Doesn't mean they're going to bind to receptor sites necessarily. You might need to work on that with 9-MeBC or other compounds, but you're restoring the quantities of dopamine in certain regions, striatal dopamine particularly. We do not know if it's restoring dopamine in the ventral tegmental area. Other mesocortical limbic areas, we're not entirely sure if it's restoring dopamine fully, meaning restoring dopaminergic levels. And again, working on existing neurons and not regenerating new neurons. However, if you look at this paper here, I'll make it a little smaller so you guys can see. The olfactory bulb, which is basically like, where's the olfactory bulb? It's like right here. It's like behind the prefrontal cortex, just like a small little thing called the olfactory bulb, necessary, as you might imagine by the name, for you being able to smell things. How you guys doing? Doing all right? You with me? You with me? You with me? You with me? And what this paper says is adult neurogenesis restores dopaminergic neuron loss in the olfactory bulb. So what it tells us is that there is an ability to restore dopamine neurons, and it has to do with neurogenesis. Neurogenesis is the process of spawning new neurons, right? So in that regard, in addition to L-Dopa, not chronically, but perhaps for a month or 2 or 3, depending on your situation in which you need to restore dopaminergic function, levels, extracellular levels, you may want to be looking at, let's see, did I take a screenshot of that? No, I did not. Okay, so what you may want to be looking at, I'm going to put the paper in front of you now. This should not come as a surprise to folks at all. Let me just get that paper in here. That one was that this one? Yes, it is. Our nootropic friend, Uridine, restorative effects of Uridine plus docosahexaenoic acid in rat model of Parkinson's disease. So that's Uridine and DHA together. And I'm going to read a little bit from this summary so that you can, well, there's actually a lot in the paper that folks that are interested in this should go and actually read. I'll start with the following. Administering 5-uridine monophosphate, which is just UMP, and DHA increases synaptic membranes and dendritic spines in rodents. We examine their effects on the rotational behavior and dopaminergic markers in rats with partial unilateral hydroxydopamine-induced striatal lesions. So 6-OHDA, which is 6-hydroxydopamine, is actually a neurotoxin. So what they're trying to do is see if uridine and DHA facilitates the protection of neurons in the presence of a dopaminergic neuronal toxin. And if it's able to restore dopaminergic cell bodies. That latter part is not fully elucidated. I mean, I sort of just ran through the paper, but I have read this paper before, back in the day, especially when formulating Cortex and really sitting on the shoulders of the Mr. Happy stack, which is restorative in nature. Some time ago, and it is my belief that UMP, really the constituents in the Mr. Happy stack, so uridine, DHA, B vitamin, selenium, the initial thread poster on the Mr. Happy stack used alpha GPC. I mean, these are the chemicals involved in neurogenesis and phosphatide phospholipid synthesis. And that stack is very regenerative and restorative. I've seen on the restoring dopamine function side, in addition to just restoring extracellular dopamine levels, uridine and this combination be highly effective in people that need it, specifically some of the PSSD folks. You know, usually when we get stuck in a place where everything else is improving but libido is still shot, that tends to work. So just stepping back a little bit, oh yeah, and I also wanted to quick talk about D2's AutoInhibition. Was it this paper? Sorry, I'm sort of all over the place here. No, do I not have that paper? Where's that paper? Hold on. We're basically the loss of regulatory. Okay, there it is right there. Let me screenshot that. And that screenshot should appear soon. There it is. Okay. This paper goes into essentially explaining that the D2 receptors, I believe it's the presynaptic D2 receptors, are essentially supposed to modulate the quantities of dopamine, kind of extracellularly, particularly because they function as autoreceptors. That's what autoreceptors do for those of you that get autoreceptors. But what's interesting about this paper and the use of L-Dopa, exogenous L-Dopa, is that in the striatum, regulation by the presynaptic D2 receptors, again, these are autoreceptors, is still operative or functional on endogenous dopamine. So dopamine that you're making in your brain, the D2 regulatory receptors are able to regulate the function or the quantity of extracellular dopamine. That's part of the D2 receptor's job, but they are not able to control the quantity of extracellular dopamine when you administer L-Dopa. Okay, so that's an interesting thing. Like, if folks are trying to restore dopaminergic levels, L-Dopa, though there are some longer-term negative implications, could be a useful thing in conjunction with other things that might foster or that do foster enzyme expression, like bromontane. And the interesting thing to note about it, and perhaps why L-Dopa is effective in restoring dopaminergic function, again, co-administered with other things, is because it's not the quantity is not being regulated by D2. As seen in this study right here, loss of regulation by presynaptic D2 receptors of exogenous L-Dopa derived dopamine release in the dopaminergic denervated, which just means sort of integrated striatum. Okay, takeaways. Yeah, L-Dopa is longer term something to be careful with taking, at least super chronically. I do believe it is useful and can have a place in a dopaminergic restoration protocol, along with bromontane, but ultimately you're just restoring extracellular levels and potentially some dopaminergic function, especially as you get into the receptor side with chemicals like 9-methylbcarboline. But adult neurogenesis in the olfactory bulb can facilitate the generation of new dopaminergic neurons in the olfactory bulb. So and then you've got uridine, DHA, B complex, alpha GPC, selenium as a combination of things, which has been demonstrated to do a lot of synaptic plasticity-esque neurogenesis and otherwise spawning of new neurons. Can it actually make you create more dopaminergic neurons? In the case of Parkinson's, which is not what this is about, hard to say, because that disease is characterized by like the internal attack and destruction of dopaminergic neurons. But in other situations where you've had some sort of temporary attack of dopaminergic neurons, like in the case of potentially PSSD, there's obviously a loss of dopaminergic function. Whether or not there's dopaminergic neurons that are destroyed is sort of still up in the air, I believe. So the Mr. Happy stack, or that uridine centered stack, may offer some extremely useful help. Okay, so I hope I've been useful in explaining restoring dopaminergic function. I think all of these things play a role. Please do your own research on it. Some interesting takeaways, again, is that restoring dopamine levels extracellularly is something you can do with L-Dopa, particularly because it's just not mediated by the autoreceptor inhibition, the D2 receptor, which acts to regulate the quantity. It will regulate your own production of dopamine, but not L-Dopa-induced dopamine quantities, which is just super interesting. And then again, on the synaptic plasticity side, I'm really trying to restore the other side of dopaminergic function, potentially dopaminergic neurons. A uridine, alpha GPC, or cognizin, B complex, DHA, selenium stack is useful for that. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Hope that's been useful. More to come on that because like I'm very heavy on the dopamine side now because it's playing a major role in the PSSD folks that I'm working with. And so it is making me more interested in discussing it. In the meantime, guys, Cortex stack right now, livecortex.com, powerful pre-made nootropic stack. At this stage, it's 6 years out in the market, so 37 countries. Folks love it. People keep asking me for auto ship. Perhaps it's something I'll do. I just think you should cycle every nootropic. Anyway, powerful pre-made stack, livecortex.com, nootropic stack, Cortex. It's a strong stack for verbal fluency, motivation, mental energy. Again, if you're brand new to nootropics, I created this product based because I was pissed off that nothing existed for people that were new. Like had I read or had I watched this video course, Nootropics Ground Zero, when I was getting started, I would have saved 5 years probably of experimentation and doing things the wrong way and not getting results and having stacks be inconsistent and all this kind of stuff. Get Ground Zero at livecortex.com. And again, if you need to get with me on improving cognitive function, general baseline energy, really fully optimizing productivity via optimizing brain performance and output, either do the 6-month intensive if you've got the budget, that's better, we have more time to work together, more stacks to designate, or the 3.5 month, in which case we'll get a ton done and still get you some pretty good results. Get those at livecortex.com. If you have any questions about it, please email me, ryan@livecortex.com, and let's talk about it. Otherwise, everybody, thanks so much for watching. More content to come soon, possibly a live stream over booze coming soon. Definitely a live stream over coffee coming soon. Talk to you next time.